And now it's time for our main event of the evening for the UFC Undisputed Heavyweight Championship. Mike Goldberg, Joe Rogan, what a great night it has been. GSP retains the welterweight title. Now it's time for the heavyweight title fight. Let's go right inside the numbers. Brock Lesnar, the reigning champion, a 5-1 advantage in his total striking, the most accurate ground striker in UFC history, and he's successful with his takedowns 3 out of every 4 attempts. The former UFC heavyweight champion and the present interim champion has defeated him before. Frank Mir, the most wins as a UFC heavyweight with 6 by submission, and most of his fights do not last very long. It is time for our main event of the evening. Mir has never been as confident mentally or physically, and Brock Lesnar is a freak of nature.
Well, Mir has never been as well trained. One of the most important parts about this fight is that Frank Mir has always been a guy who relied on talent alone. He's always been a great jiu-jitsu practitioner who was able to submit opponents, but never really trained like the top elite athletes like George St. Pierre or others. Now he is. We saw him at the weigh-in. He looks in phenomenal condition. It's the best he's ever trained. When I talked to his trainers, he said Frank is renewed. He has been reinvigorated, and a lot of that came from that fight with Brock Lesnar. Beating Brock Lesnar put him back in the game. And Brock Lesnar knows that in order to really be considered a heavyweight champion, he has to beat the man that beat him. That said, Brock Lesnar is a freak of nature. He's a gigantic man. I mean, 265 pounds, huge fist, powerful wrestler, and he's an elite athlete. He gets better every single time we see him. We are going to see a better Brock Lesnar than we saw against Randy Couture. We're talking about a guy who only has 4 MMA fights ever. Astounding. 3 of them are in the UFC, and he's the UFC heavyweight champion. I mean, he's a real freak.
Well, Brock Lesnar, if he hits you, you're probably going down, as we saw with Heath Herring and Randy the Natural Couture. But Frank Mir, striking never looked as good as it did against Minotauro Nogueira, and now he's got not 1, not 2, but 3 striking coaches. Longtime coach Ken Hahn, he's got Jimmy Gifford working his boxing, and Mark Delagrati in the corner of Frank Mir as well.
And I've also never seen Frank Mir look so calm and collected and confident at the weigh-ins. He has done all the necessary work, so all the guesswork and worry and doubt, that's not in his mind anymore. Now he knows what he's capable of doing. He knows what he's already done before. He's beaten Brock Lesnar by submission. He has a tremendous advantage psychologically because of that. And he beat him when he wasn't in as good a shape as he is now.
Well, Brock Lesnar has been a wrestler his entire life, a spectacular one at that. But Frank Mir has been a true mixed martial artist for the greater part of his life, and that could very well be the difference tonight.
The first fight, it's hard to deny a victory. It wasn't like I won a decision. He tapped. He cried uncle. He said, stop, I can't fight no more.
That's a cruddy way to win, because from the moment the fight began, his back was against the wall the whole time. I made a minor mistake. I mean, can this guy get any more luckier? I gave that knee bar to him, and he knows that.
You need to hit harder, Brock. Only losers thinking what ifs and could have been.
Listen, I am the UFC heavyweight champion. Enough said. The other belt that Frank holds is a make-believe belt.
Oh, again! Frank Mir will face Brock Lesnar!
Brock has my belt, and I'm going to go take it from him.
He's going to be moving his fat little hips around on the mat, and I'm going to be smothering him with lots of fists to the face.
His ground and pound's really not, it's annoying because he is a strong guy, but he only lifts his hand 2 inches from your face and drops it down real fast. It's like having your little sister jump on your back and pulling your hair.
This guy's got a horseshoe up his ass, and I'm going to pull that damn thing out and beat him over the head with it.
He needs to be more concerned about what I'm going to do to his arm and not worried about where he's putting it.
I've got zero respect for him, and I'm going to win this fight.
UFC heavyweight champion of the world, the present UFC interim heavyweight champion of the world, Frank Mir. Man, he looks relaxed and confident.
He looks very relaxed, very confident. And you know, one of the things that Brock Lesnar's been saying is that Frank Mir's belt is a made-up belt. Well, you know what? A lot of people don't like interim belts, and that is a fact. But the bottom line is, they fought once and Frank Mir won. It was a controversial loss, only in the fact that Steve Mazzagatti stopped the fight at one point to stand them back up again, to take a point away from Brock Lesnar for punching Frank Mir in the back of the head. That said, Frank Mir did submit Brock Lesnar. He got him to tap. That is huge. And he got him to tap, as I said before, at a time when he wasn't in nearly as good a shape as he is tonight.
Mark Delagrati. You know what? The thing about Frank Mir, too, which is interesting, Joe, is there's Ken Hahn.
And Robert Drysdale behind him. That's another very important
long-time jiu-jitsu coach. And right after he beat Minotauro Nogueira, Frank Mir, down the road at the MGM, he turned and he looked at Brock in the stands and he said, "You have my belt."
Well, you know, he was soaring right then. I mean, that was the biggest fight of his life, the biggest victory of his life. And one thing, Mike, that you're not seeing right here, but Frank Mir had clashed heads with Forrest Griffin sometime recently in training and had a big hematoma on his forehead. He had to have it lanced, and they're pointing to it right now, and they're putting some Vaseline on it. It is possible that could open up if he gets hit in it again, but they lanced it so that it'll drip down the side of his head and not into his eyes.
Considered for a long time the greatest jiu-jitsu artist amongst the long-time mixed martial arts heavyweights. Nogueira right there as well, and many others. But as we showed you graphically, no one as a heavyweight has scored more submission victories inside the octagon than Frank Mir.
And one of the most important things about his submissions, Mike, is he's one of the very best at fighting off of his back. And to find a big man that's capable of fighting off of his back like that in training is very, very difficult, because there's not that many to do. Big guys are used to being on top. They're used to enforcing a dominant position because they're so big and so heavy in training. And so they don't like to be on their back. But Frank, being a very intelligent strategist, realized that the best way for him to fight bigger guys and stronger guys is to fight off of his back. And if someone puts him on his back, he wants to be well prepared. And he is. He has one of the very best guards in the world.
He is about to face a bigger and a stronger man here tonight in the main event. The champion, Brock Lesnar. Heavyweight champion of the world, Brock Lesnar.
Such an interesting situation with this guy, Mike, considering the fact that he's only had 4 mixed martial arts fights ever, and that he's the UFC heavyweight champion, and that he is a former fake wrestling guy. He's a former, entertainment wrestling guy in the WWE. And so many people didn't give him credit for the athletic skills that he possesses because of that, but he is a former national NCAA American champion. He's a serious amateur wrestler who had no professional venue to go to before this.
His his longtime trainer, Greg Nelson. Mark Morgan, now training with him full-time. He was an assistant coach at the University of Minnesota when Brock won the national championship. He's worked with Eric Olson. He's trained with Sean Shirk. Of course, Sean much smaller, but a member of that great team in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Began training in mixed martial arts at just 28 years old, and he looks to retain his title at the expense of Frank Mir here tonight.